All right, welcome to the Not My Job Pod, where I talk to people who have different jobs from me. And this may or may not ever see the light of day, and that's okay too. So, this is Heather Kimpton, who is one of my best friends, if not my best friend in the whole world. So, it's a lot easier, a lot less stressful to start out here. So,
No
thanks for
pressure,
being
number
my,
one.
yeah, thanks for being my guinea pig today. I thought to myself, I was like, okay, worst case scenario, this is absolutely horrible to listen to. And then, yeah, the absolute worst case scenario is that I just spend an hour talking to my friend and then I never have to show this to anyone.
Exactly. It can just
Yeah.
get buried.
But I appreciate it though, like when I was like, I am going to start a podcast in 2025. Do you remember what you said? Do you remember your response?
I think I said something along the lines of, I chose plants, you've chosen podcasts. No one is marathon running, thank God.
Yes.
Right?
I mean, yeah, I mean it's not too late. Like one of us could be like, yeah, marathon. That's something I want to do in my 30s. But yeah,
Please
I'm
don't,
glad
because
that
I don't want to come cheer you on at a marathon. I don't want to stand in the cold for like 3 hours for the 3 seconds that you run past me and I'm like, oh, well done, Emily. No, don't make me do that to celebrate your achievements. I'd much rather chat to you for an hour and then nothing else. Nothing, like, I don't have to stand in the cold. This is much better. Please
okay.
continue.
I'll do my best. Okay, yeah. No new running hobbies for now, at least.
Thank
So
you.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. But anyway, so the idea behind this podcast is that I work in tech, obviously, and I get way too stressed out about work sometimes because I care about it in the way that a someone who like has like a I'm not going to say my job's not important because like it's important to many people and I enjoy the things that I do, but then sometimes I get so stressed out. I'm like, okay, I'm not a heart surgeon. Nobody's going to die on the table if I don't like optimize something correctly. Do you ever feel like that? Or I guess let's tell people first, what is it that you do?
So I am an ESL teacher. ESL is English to speakers of other languages. So I work in a further education college in East London, and most of my students are settled migrants, refugees, and asylum seekers.
See, I would say that makes you sound I'm like optimize websites so that they can make money for businesses. And you're like, I help immigrants who are trying to make a life for themselves in England.
But like some days, some days, I guess it's like a continuous thing, like gradually every day, step by step, you're making a difference. But some days I feel like I'm not making a difference.
I mean, that's fair too. But do you think you got into this though? Because you were like, I'm gonna make a difference, or you're like, it was kind of like, what was the path?
We started teaching, Emily and I started teaching at the same time. And
Mm.
gradually I fell in love with it more and more. And Emily began to hate it more and more. And eventually it got to a point where Emily stopped. And then I took the next qualification to become more serious about it. And eventually I was working overseas. I had been working overseas for a long time. And I was like, I want to move back to London. I want something more stable. And my friend was working in ESOL and she was working at a college. And I happened to know that a job had come up and I interviewed and I got it. And I feel like that's where I'm going to grow old. That's where I'm going to die. It's kind of a terrifying feeling to know that I am working at the place where I intend to be working when I retire. Is like, I'm so lucky that I like where I work. I'm so lucky that everyone's lovely. All the people who've been there for 20, 30 years complain about the benefits package that we have. But for me, having worked from going just off, like one time my employer wasn't even paying my employer's national insurance. They were taking it out of my own terrible situations. So I don't complain.
No, that's fair. And it's interesting too. I'm glad that you rephrased it to it's weird to know that you're working at a place that you're going to be at until you retire. Because I thought you were about to be like, until I die. And I was like, all right.
I think
Oh my God.
maybe I did say that. I mean, yeah,
The first round you
hopefully,
did. But you rephrased it like in a nicer way.
yeah, because I don't want to die. I want to retire. Let's make that clear.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good distinction. I mean, I think, yeah, working in tech as well is a little bit different because I think everyone switches jobs. Like, average turnover is like 2 years is like a long stint at a tech company, especially when you work in marketing. And like, I'm by no means saying, like, in an ideal world, I just get to stay at the same job and it's still like fulfilling and I'm still like providing value. But yeah, like to be able to say, I work here and this is where I'm staying until I retire is like such a wild concept for me.
For me too, I think, most of my teaching jobs I had for maximum 2 years. And I would say for all young teachers, that's the the best thing. I don't know necessarily if you're working in a primary school, secondary school, high school, but if you're teaching English as a second language, to be going from job to job, to be working in different contexts is only going to enrich and improve your teaching. And now I keep thinking, oh, I'm not really doing anything to improve and enrich my teaching anymore. Am I stagnating?
That can't be true. I feel like that's not true. I feel like I know you better than that, and you're still like always learning new stuff.
Yeah, well, we do have a new thing going on called supported experiments, which is where we are supposed to be exploring new things while we're working, but there is no more time has been created for that to happen. So hopefully some time will magically be created where this can regularly be focused on, because it would be nice. It would be nice.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But to go back to what you said at the beginning, yes, I do feel like I'm doing something important, and I am really glad that I get to do this job, because I wouldn't choose any other job in the world. I feel like I have the best job. I feel like I have my dream job.
I mean, that's huge. Like, not a lot of people can say that.
Yeah.
I mean, and if we go back to kind of how you said how we started together, like we met through working at ESL, but I mean, because you graduated with a literature
Yes.
degree. Yeah. So you were kind of like in that realm, whereas I was like, I don't know what I want to do, but I want to travel. So I went and got something called a CELTA, and I was like, this will enable me to travel and teach and like work in business environments, teaching English to adults, and then later ended up working with kids as well, because I was like, I just want to travel and I don't know what I want to do. And so like it was because we've known each other like 13 years now, and so to like watch that longer, we met in 20. I don't know. When did we meet? When we lived in
2012. Indonesia? No, you're right. Your maths is completely flawless. No, you're right. I bring the words. This is why I teach English. Carry on.
I was just like, no, I've ruined the anniversary.
No, you're right. You're right. I'm wrong.
No. No, but like, I think, because, yeah, I mean, I've now been out of ESL since like 2017. So like, I only did it for a few years, like, so that we could like, because we were doing like the fun part of like working in different contexts and like teaching and traveling. And I think those glory years, we like got in at the right time. I don't think that exists really anymore for like younger teachers who are like, oh, I kind of want to travel. Like, I feel like teaching English abroad now is a lot harder to get into. There's like more rules around it.
I'm not. I mean, again, I'm out of that world too. But I know we kept leaving places because they were changing, and
yeah.
I mean, also we were done, and we only ever wanted to do 1 year or 2 years. But I mean, if it had been easier to live in South America, for example, if there had been fewer problems with our visas, then maybe we would have stayed longer.
It's true. That's true. And I am like, and so you know as well, I do kind of want to like go through kind of like the crap we used to pull when we were young, happy teachers, and then move on to that. Because I do actually want to talk about like your specific job now, because like obviously us in our early 20s, like having fun is very, very different from like the actual career that you have now. Yeah. But yeah, so we met in Indonesia. And how would you describe the experience of like being what were we, like 21, 22, 23?
Yeah, 22 and 23
kids. Yeah.
And we were I would say we had a pretty sweet deal, because we lived in free accommodation. We lived we lived walking distance from where we worked. We lived in a great neighborhood with amazing food in the nearby market. And I don't think we taught in the mornings, did we? Did we have morning classes?
Well, that was...
Or was
no,
that
definitely
China?
not.
Because I can't remember anymore what happened in China and what happened in Indonesia.
I remember in Indonesia, we would like go out partying because we were 22, and then you could sleep until like, I don't know, noon, and then like pull yourself together, have a cold shower because there was no hot water. Because like a lot of houses just don't have, we lived in quite a nice house, it just didn't have hot water. And then you'd be like, oh, well, now I'm ready to go to work. And you would work in the evening, when like actual business people and like adults and kids are out of school or like coming to the language school.
Yeah. So, and there were so many good things about that. And I think the most interesting thing that happened is that Emily joined around my month 9. So you have a year-long contract. So I had been there working. This is my first long-term teaching job. I'd done like about 6 weeks at a summer school in the UK. And through someone there, they'd said, oh, you should go join this company. You can choose these countries. And I ended up choosing Indonesia because Russia and China had different alphabets. And also Indonesia sounded really exotic and alluring. And I was like, yeah, that's where I need to be.
Which is ironic now because you have learned quite a bit of Chinese since then.
Yeah. So Emily rocks up and she's like, what is going on here? This is chaos. Where I came from in China, the children do what you say. There's no screaming. They follow me to the bathroom in a line. What is happening here? And so then we all started going to Emily to get these like tips on how to control children. And yeah, I would say Emily changed the standard. But I had been working really hard until that point, trying to become, less lesson, like my lesson plans. I still have some of my Indonesia lesson plans, and they're fine for a 22-year-old new teacher. But I look at them like, wow, this is really chaotic. This is really jarring. Like, you are jumping, and there are a lot of games in here with very little language learning benefit to them. But I'm sure everyone was having fun. I do remember being more fun. I remember being a lot more fun and doing a lot more games than I do now.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I think that's kind of like, yeah, it's weird. I imagine, because I look back on that and I'm like, okay, like I remember like there was this one class that I had that was, well, because you had the housewives class, they actually called it that, the housewives class, right? Like,
no, they gave that was our manager had that. We all wanted that class because they were a riot. They were such a riot. And the DOS, the director of studies, always had that class on a Saturday. And I was like, please let me have the class. They're amazing. I want to have fun times and giggles with all of these because we knew them all because they were the mums of our students.
Yeah.
And there's a very I don't know, it's like a huge community vibe. Like we would hang out with all of our students, all of the students' families. We would do stuff together all the time. We got invited out. I'm trying to think, did we hang out with them in the mall? Because by the end we were going to the beach with them. How did we all it's just a very sort of like friendly environment. And everyone wanted to take care of us as well, because we were away from home.
No, but like there's so many stories like that as well. Like I'm so grateful that like that was my one of my first because I was in China for a year before we met, and then Indonesia, and then we traveled together to Ecuador, Chile, back to China. You stayed in China, then I went to Tonga for Peace Corps, and then I think around that time we were like, we need to start adult people jobs, and then that's kind of where the transition happened. But yeah, I mean, at the same time, though, like, I don't know. I don't think that job exists anymore for like 22-year-olds to like go have that same experience quite in the same way.
Yeah, I have no idea, because we had a friend who stayed in China long after we left, maybe 3 years after we left, 4 years after we left, and things were changing so much. New regulations were being brought in that meant that those the freedom and the fun times that we had been having, the way you were able to kind of relax and do what you wanted with your classes, or I think there were even limitations on like when the classes could happen. I won't go into detail because I can't really remember what happened. Yeah, I know that we have friends who left that line of work because it just wasn't the fun, easy kind of relaxing job that it used to be. I mean, and not to say that we didn't take it seriously. I think we all worked very hard and we all enjoyed our work, but it made living abroad no longer this, it wasn't as appealing as it had been when it was easy to get the visa and easy to stay and everything felt relaxing.
Yeah. I mean, I think because also when I talk to other people now about I was talking to one of my colleagues at work now about how she was like, yeah, when I was in my early 20s, I was living in Paris and it was such a great time, but I had no money. And I remember being I was in this conversation, I was like, I never really went through that because I went from university straight to Asia, where they were paying us a really good local wage to have just a really fun and like you said, it's and I also I did the CELTA, the Cambridge, what does it stand for? Certificate
of English language teaching to adults. English language teaching to adults.
Which is not a super difficult certificate to get, but it's issued by I don't remember, Cambridge University. I remember, and it took 4 weeks to get. I had to go do it in person, but that's not enough. It's like you said, when you look back on your lesson plans, you're like, oh, this was chaotic.
Yeah, but at the time, the CELTA is, I don't know about for you, but it was one of I did it in a summer. I did it in the summer between my second and final year of university. I was working all night trying to prepare for my teaching practices, to get all of my work done, all of my, I don't know what submissions we had to do. I don't remember anymore, but preparing for a teaching practice, even if it was because we started out with 20 minutes and then 30 minutes and then 45 minutes. And every time it increased, like I remember like handing out my handouts and my hands shaking because I was so terrified. And you're trying to remember all of the things that you should and shouldn't do. And I think as well, sometimes it's unnecessarily complicated when you have the small pieces of paper and the big pieces of paper, and you've got to keep it all snappy and have all this pizzazz. And in reality, I don't do any of that anymore. I can't be chopping up tiny pieces of paper every day of the week. But all of that was deemed essential. So just so much that you're thinking about, so many moving parts. And then, you know, it comes to the end of the CELTA and you're qualified to go out there. But yeah, you're right. It's not a long time to be learning and then allowed to go teach people.
Yeah. And I remember, again, it's not an easy qualification to get because it was like it was a very intense 4 weeks of like 12 to 14-hour days, because you would finish with like the teaching and then the study practice, and then you'd like go, you know, have to prepare those lessons and cut up all the little pieces of paper for the activities or whatever. And like, no, it's nice to know you don't do any cutting and pasting anymore.
Occasionally I am found using the guillotine at work, and someone will come over and be like, oh, what are you? It's a big deal. If you see someone doing little paper cutting, you're like, what's going on? What in the CELTA Delta is happening here? Stop that.
Okay, wait, let's back up. So what is a CELTA, what is a Delta, and what is the difference?
So a CELTA is a level 5 qualification. It's the Certificate of English Language Teaching to Adults. And a Delta is a level 7 qualification, which is the same level as a master's, but it's not quite as long as a master's. And that is the diploma of
level
English language
7,
teaching.
according to what?
Standard universal qualifications, right? Like A levels are level 5. A bachelor's is level 6. And a master's is a level 7.
Okay. Well, I didn't know that actually, because I just did it in the US and it's a British qualification, so I never really put 2 and 2 together there. But I remember, because the Delta was like infinitely longer and more expensive, and you can only do it after a certain amount of experience, right?
Yes.
Because you have to
you need the basics. You need the basics like rooted into you. Because I think we had someone on our Delta who had been teaching for 2 years, and people who had been teaching for longer were overwhelmed. I think I had 2 full breakdowns in front of everyone. Do you remember? And that was a small number. And then compared to other people.
What constitutes as a breakdown? Like what happened here that you were like, all right, I've lost it?
So it's been no sleep the night before because I've been trying to get something ready to be submitted. Sat down on the train on the way in, feeling like I'm going to pass out. Not able to go home because there's lessons to learn and work to do to submit. Because again, I did the 10-week intensive, and that's not all of it, but that's the intensive part where you do your teaching practice training and you do all your observations. So you complete one module fully in that 10 weeks. I think I just remember my tutor coming up to me and going, "Did you sleep last night?" And me going, "No." And then I'm like trying to explain my work that I've done, and I'm trying to express that this is not as good as the other ones that I've done, and I'm really confused and it doesn't make any sense. And she was just like, "Were all the other ones okay?" And I was like, "Yes." And she was like, "Did you pass the other ones?" And I was like, "Yes." She goes, "So why would this one be any different?" And then I just lost it.
No,
but
everyone like really sweet too. Like you're gonna be okay. No, but like why do we do that in the workplace? Like again, and we're gonna kind of get into that as to like why the work you do now is actually like super beneficial to real people's lives. But like why at the time like you're doing this certification that you're deciding to do, but like you're the one driving yourself into the wall, like so that it's perfect, and then you're the one like giving yourself a mental breakdown when this tutor's like your other ones have always been great. Like why would this be any different?
And part of it's exhaustion, right? Like you can't think clearly anymore. All you can see is the mistakes. And also, I think another thing that we do when we're learning is we hold ourselves to, we know what we haven't done. We know what we haven't achieved. Probably and we know what the benchmark is. We don't know what the benchmark is. So maybe what I'm thinking is a pass or a fail. And maybe I'm actually hovering between, is it a merit or is it not a merit? But I don't know that. I don't know what I need to do in order to pass, get a merit, get a distinction. And so I think that our tutors knew that we were fine in terms of but we didn't know. We were fine. And actually, in terms of everyone having breakdowns, because I said I had two, other people had many more than two. Our tutor went up north to do observations because they're tutors and they're observers for the Delta. And she said, oh, I went to observe a Delta course and everyone there was male. And she said the atmosphere was completely different. Everyone was really blokey. They were just like, well, go on then, mate, you can do it, go on. And there was none of like this, the crying, the meltdowns, like everyone just had it together. Whereas we were 9 women and 1 man. And I
why do you think, why does that change things so much? That's so interesting.
Well, I think also, it's less acceptable for men are going to be less comfortable showing their emotions. There's no way you would do a Delta and not feel overwhelmed. There's no way you would do the intensive and not feel overwhelmed. Now, there is a possibility that they were coming in for an observation and they weren't doing the intensive. And then that would explain a lot in the change in dynamic, because we were all at our wits' end. Every day at our wits' end. It's the difference between Celta and Delta. Celta is like sheer panic. Can I do this? And Delta is like deep-seated discomfort and terror. Can I achieve this in the time that I have? I know I am competent. I know I am clever enough to do this, but can it be done in the time that I have set myself? Mm-hmm. And I think if perhaps they were doing the distance one that takes place over a longer period of time, I like to think they were, and that's why they were much more chill than we were.
Okay. So they're not more chill because they're men. They're more chill because they probably had more time to do the course, maybe. Hopefully.
And maybe they were crying at home. I was also crying at home.
I don't know. As I get older, I have this rule, like, you cry once at work, fine. It happens to the best of us. But my personal rule is if I have cried twice at work, I'm quitting that job. It's too much. But that's also an oversimplification, because obviously crying is good. It like pulls out your emotions. Mm-hmm. But like, so I'm not counting like crying over work. Like if you get home and you're like really upset, that's different. But like if I'm like at work and like in a meeting and I've like cried, like that's not okay.
No. I do my crying in the toilet at work.
How many times do you cry at work regularly now?
It's not regular, it's occasional, and it's usually, I would say most of the time. So I had a challenging student last year, and there was a disproportionate amount of crying over that while I was sorting it out. And then while managers were being incredibly supportive to me and saying, this is your choice, you can do this, you can do that, and just so supported. But typically it's to do with progression and non-progression. And if I have to tell a student that they can't continue, that will always be that most of the time is an upsetting conversation, whether or not there is pushback from that student. And a lot of the time there isn't pushback. There have always been warnings. It's never unfair that someone is being told they can't stay in the college, because the college is free, the college is for everyone, and the college relies on funding. Sometimes if I think a decision has been made that is unfair, I will push back and I will do everything I can to keep a student there. We have attendance requirements, we have achievement requirements, that's always a hard conversation.
Let's take one step back too. So the school that you're working at now, like maybe a little bit of background on like what it is, why it's different from like a for-profit education system, or sort of, like what makes it different and special and funded, and what does that mean?
So I work in a further education college. So a massive proportion of our students are 16 to 18, and they come from schools in the local area, and they come to do their GCSEs, A-levels, and other types of qualifications with us. I don't work with 16 to 18. We do have some teachers who do ESL English, teach English to the 16 to 18, but I work in 19 plus, and my department is the biggest adult department in the college. Okay. So we offer we places to, again, in terms of like the requirements and what someone needs, I don't work in that department, but basically you need to be a resident of the UK, or you need to have a visa to be here as you need to have a visa to be here as a resident. Or you've come in as an asylum seeker or a refugee. So
they're mostly residents of the UK, but they have varying levels of English as a second, third, fourth, even fifth language. Or are they...
So we get settled migrants, refugees, asylum seekers. And so coming in, sometimes they've moved with their families for work. And then obviously we have people who have more upsetting stories behind them and more difficulties. And we're looking at trauma-informed teaching in trauma-informed classrooms. But that's not always the case because of where we are in London. We have a Bangladeshi community. And so you're always balancing those super spiky profiles. We've got we do level by people, students come for an assessment, and then our levels are entry 1, entry 2, entry 3, level 1, and level 2, and that loosely equates to the CEFR, which is the Common European Framework. Does FR just stand for framework?
I actually don't know, and I should know that because I've been I've been obsessed with the CEFR because when I learned Spanish and then now with German, I'm constantly battling with that framework of like, how good are you at a language? But yeah, so if I'm oversimplifying, I would say like the A1, A2 is like super basic, B1, B2 is like intermediate, but you can kind of chat. That's me in German right now. It's chaotic, but I can say stuff. And then C1 and then C2 is like native. So what would you say, like do you have varying classes, or are most of your students like kind of intermediate because they already live there?
So we have a huge proportion of our students go into that beginner level, and most of our classes are in that kind of A1, A2 bracket. We have fewer classes around intermediate. When students sort of complete their intermediate course, that's when they'll be encouraged to move into other areas of the college and get a GCSE, which is a qualification that you need before you can do your A-levels or go off to university. Most jobs want you to have a GCSE in English and maths. So it's just building up learners so that they are ready to move on and actually get the qualifications that they need for the rest of their lives.
So like a lot of these students are coming in and like they want to be there and they're like, I need to learn so that I can do XYZ. Like they are motivated on their own, or does that kind of vary between student backgrounds?
It doesn't even vary between student backgrounds. It's so personal. It's so personal. I have this one student right now who is such an anomaly in that he had a crisis at home and he messaged me on the Tuesday and said, I can't come in. I have to look after my kids. He was in on the Thursday and said, I found a nanny. For me, I was astounded because a lot of the time obstacles come up and people are thrown, rightly so, people are thrown by them. Issues with your boiler, you need to stay home for a sofa delivery, all those things that come up, compared to someone who prioritizes their learning, as this student does, above all else. He was saying, I'm gonna be there, I'm gonna be in class. He demonstrates that every day in different ways. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have students who time and time again will show up late. They don't make any changes to their routine. You kind of try and reinforce the importance of being here on time, or I suppose the big issue is the studying outside of class. Helping, a lot of what we do is study skills based, to get someone realizing that I'm not teaching you English in 5 hours once or twice a week when you come to college. I'm giving you tools and then you're working on that outside of class. And I would say that is the biggest obstacle.
I obviously, like, I live in Germany now. I chose to move to Germany, but like that is currently I still have to wrap my head around that, because like I'll do 5 hours of German classes a week and then I'm like, no, but that's not enough. Like people are always, and I just got to B1 because I really started taking learning German seriously over the last 6 months. And it was just like, I had to sit down and talk to my roommates and I'm like, you have to speak to me in German more often, or I have to start listening to podcasts. I had to forego my music on my way to work. I had to switch my subtitles to German whenever I watch TV. Like it was like finding those opportunities to get more, because in my life, I live in Germany, but like I work in English. I have English speaking friends. Oftentimes in Germany, you go to a coffee shop and you order in German and the person's like, oh, I'm sorry, I don't speak German. And you're like, cool. which is such a weird experience. I mean, that's unique to Berlin, I think. Other cities in Germany, not so much. But I mean, a lot of people are like, wow, you got to B1 like pretty fast. Like it was, kind of like they're thinking, I don't know, like, especially I don't know why it's Americans specifically, but like other Americans are like, okay, that's like pretty easy. And I was like, no, it was an insane amount of time and effort that went into that. And so, like, how do you kind of because honestly, I feel like I wrapped my head around it because we're so close. I was able to be like, okay, I always hear you talking about this. You're like, I'm not going to teach you English. And, if you're in class for 3 hours a week, that's on you to like find a way to incorporate it in your life. So like, what's kind of your advice for either your students or people like me who, have a life in one language, but like you're trying to learn the language of this country you live in?
I think so. The main thing, it sounds so silly. It sounds so silly, but the thing that made the biggest difference for me when I started studying languages was reading graded readers, which are books designed for your level, and you're like, oh wait, I understand this. And the problems that lots of beginners have is that they'll come into my classroom. There was this Colombian lady at the beginning of September, and she came up to me at the end of class and she was like, this is the beginner class. I need to be in the beginner class. I don't think this is my level. And I was like, all the vocab. We tested that today. You are in the right level. You're just not stringing it together. And it's that I think we still have this, like, the grammar they are valid, but they have this validity to them where people think, well, I'm doing a grammar exercise, I'm studying. And a lot of the time studying doesn't have to look like that. And it's a lot more focused on usage. So if you are using language when you're seeing it in context and when you're understanding messages. So with all of my beginner learners, I include in the lesson taking them to the library, helping them choose a book, and setting aside and then instructing them to set aside time to read that book outside of class. And sometimes we start really small because, of course, we're all busy. Everyone's busy and they're looking at me like, how am I going to read this? And so we start setting alarms on phones because you're going to forget. You're going to forget that you have this book in your bag that you're not going to pick up until you come back to college next week. I'm going to forget as well. My book is in my bag right now. Have I touched it? No. But if I set an alarm, then I know. And then it's also start small. Like, tell them, can you just read half a page? Read two sentences. Read it once, read it again. That's always better than zero. And so just habit building. And I think people feel so much more motivated when they see, like, well, I'm not just studying, present simple negatives over and over and over again, or I'm not adding third person S over and over again, these things that I know, which a lot of the time, these small grammar points that we can get really bogged down in, they're not the issue. And especially elementary grammar in English is so tough. I say it over and over again. It's unreasonably hard. And rather than standing in front of a class telling them, why is there no S? It's an uncountable noun, and having them be able to say uncountable noun, it's better for them if they can just look at it and feel that it's wrong. And they just have the sense that it's wrong. And they would get that from reading and from listening, from comprehensible input. But I think it's much easier to start with written text.
Yeah, I mean, I benefit from that. The fact that I have you as a friend, and then, I was like, okay, how can I have this 1 hour commute to work every day. 3 days a week I go into the office, usually 3, 4, 5, depends on the week. But I was like, okay, how can I work this into my journey? And so I have these like graded readers, and like, that's what I do in the mornings. I read, like, that is just, it's habit now. So I get on the metro, I sit down, I pull out that graded reader, and like, it doesn't feel like, and it's still like topically relevant. Like, you can find really great language learning materials, but it still feels like I'm doing something that's like, I don't know, kind of educational, kind of fun, but I don't feel like I'm like doing flashcards or like a grammar exercise or something like that. So thanks.
Exactly.
But it's still like time spent.
It is time spent, and the more you're seeing stuff in context, and the more you're looking at semi-authentic materials as well, you're seeing all the right stuff and you're seeing it over and over again. And you mentioned the other day that you really you had this sentence that you like really latched onto, and you were like, oh, I wouldn't have said it like that, but I understand it. And if you keep reading, then those moments keep happening over and over and over again. And so that's all I want my students to do. Just keep reading.
I do want to take on to something that you said, that you're talking about uncountable nouns and countable nouns, and how it's not important that somebody can say whether it is or it isn't. You just have to feel it. Totally agree. Do you know where I'm going with this? Do you remember David and the chicken? Do you remember?
So our lovely friend David, when we all taught in China together, and we had co-teachers with some of our classes, and the co-teacher would be a local teacher.
And is David a native speaker though? Would we call him a native speaker? I think we would, even though he is. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
So David is a native speaker. He grew up with French as his first language, but he grew up bilingual. Whenever he can't think of a word, I like to pretend it's because he doesn't speak English, but it's not. That's just a wind up. He is a fantastic, amazing teacher, and they were doing animals, and chicken came up. And so he was like, yeah, chicken. It's uncountable. 1 chicken, 2 chicken, 3 chicken, 4 chicken, 5 chicken. And the co-teacher goes, David, chicken is countable. 2 chickens. And David's like, nah, chicken's uncountable. 2 chicken, 3 chicken, like sheep. 1 sheep, 2 sheep, 3 sheep, 4 sheep. And the co-teacher's like, David, no, absolutely not. So David leaves the classroom, runs out to check with another international teacher. And they're like, yeah, David, trust your co-teacher. It's 2 chickens. It's 2 chickens. Unless it's meat. Unless it's food and it's cooked and it's on the table and then it is some chicken. So David goes back into the classroom, shamefaced.
But I just love that because it's probably been more than 10 years since this happened. The last time I saw him, because he's now working at a Montessori school in Switzerland, and the last time I went to go visit him, we were eating chicken for dinner, and I was like, hey, David, do you want like some chicken or do you want 3 chicken? And he was like, yeah. He remembered. I was like, I'm so glad. If he didn't remember, he would have looked at me like I was crazy. But I was like, I'm glad we can still irritate you with that one. But
he was mortified. He was and the thing is, like, just to be clear, you would never make fun of a learner for a mistake like that. No.
But our friend David,
yes,
yeah, can definitely make fun of him.
The same thing happened when I was with a tour guide in Slovenia, and he was pointing out the landscape and was saying, there are some sheeps over there, and someone in the back felt the need to correct him and say, oh, it's sheep. I'm like, you know what he means. He's speaking English. It's so clear. What are you doing? Stop interrupting. He's just talking. He's narrating. He's telling us about his country. Just listen. Your job is not to correct. Like, so annoying.
I hate it when people do that. And don't get me wrong, like, if it's, like, obviously it's situation dependent. Like, I've had conversations with German friends who are like, literally their English is sometimes better than mine, that they teach me new words in English all the time. So like, we have that level of English, and they have specifically asked me, like, if there is a mistake that I make, please say something. Totally different from like, somebody's just trying to get a sentence out and you're like correcting how, like, I'm like, just, do you understand? Then shush, Yeah. Like, that irritates me. That irritates me to no end.
Yeah. The only time it happens when I would correct someone is usually, so I have a friend who is a proficient speaker. She's Greek. She's proficient in English. And she never, but the other day she never makes any mistakes. And then we were in the toilets the other day just chatting, and she was like, yeah, you'll have to fill me up. And I must have looked she corrected herself because she was like, Heather looks confused. I've said something wrong. And she meant fill me in. And I feel like that's where the confusion always comes because those particles are so like embedded in us. The phrasal verbs are so embedded in us, and changing a particle can just throw you. And, if I can understand what someone's saying, I'm not going to pick them up on it. But I was like, she saw my brain ticking over and going, what does this mean? I understand.
Yeah, but I mean, we even have issues like, because we lived, worked, and traveled together for like 5, 6, I don't even know how many years.
Yeah.
And now I worked quite intentionally to get my American accent back, because after living, working, and traveling with you for so long, I went back to the US and people were like, or people who didn't know me would be like, oh, do you have a British parent? Or like, have you lived in the UK for a while? Because like my intonation would kind of switch and like get really like slightly messy. And I remember you had something similar happen where they were like, oh, everything's awesome. And you were like, well.
Yeah, well, I had just got back and I was telling a story, and in the end of the story, I was like, and I slid on my butt all the way all the way down the stairs or something like that. And my friends just looked at me and were like, you slid on your butt? You sound like you're from the US. What is happening? And so I worked as well to sound just not to sound transatlantic, to just sound more like how I had sounded. But not that there's an issue with sounding transatlantic. It's tiring getting picked up on it over and over and over again.
That was it for me. I was like, yeah, because I'm not, trying to sound, because in the US, if you like have like a slightly British accent, you're seen as like a little bit fancier maybe. And now I know enough British people that I'm like, no, they're not fancy. But yeah, it's just funny. Like, yeah, people would pick up on it, and I was like, "Oh, I'm not trying." Like, it was just my accent had like actually changed, and that was so wild. But I've been told that since I've lived in, because now I've been in Europe for, well, I've been in Germany for 2 years, and then yeah, so many years abroad. I have been told by non-Americans that my volume is still not American. And I was like, okay, I'll take it. The Americans, I guess, are famous for, yeah, being just loud talkers. But also, I think my Spanish friends can give me a run for the American money on volume. But I don't know. Are there any like language stereotypes in your classrooms that like come up or that kind of thing, or anything off the top of your head?
Not so much language stereotypes. It's more just the it's so interesting to see that the way that the different nationalities perceive each other as well, and the way that they'll engage with each other. A lot of the time we'll end up with sort of monolingual subgroups within the classroom, and obviously they mix and they mingle, but you do see that people are drawn to other classmates who speak the same language as them, whereas occasionally you'll get a little magic butterfly show up, and they're flipping and flopping and fluttering around, and they're chatting to everyone. And that's really nice to see.
Yeah. I think I'm guilty of that in a language class. The last, now I just do one-on-one tutor sessions online, but I was in a language class for a short time, and yeah, it's so I guess it's just human nature, but yeah, all the little English speakers pop together, and then I don't know, I remember, because I've worked in this context and, not as a serious capacity, but then also just knowing you and hearing you talk, I was like, all right, I got to choose someone who, doesn't speak English as their first language. So I was always partnered with a woman from Korea. And I feel like I got more out of the class because we were more invested in finding German as a common language. So yeah, I think a lot of learners do that.
Yeah. I have a Somali lady and an Afghani lady who sit together, and I have to tell them to stop talking all the time because they are talking over top of me all the time. But I'm like, they're talking in English because they don't share a common language. So they are getting so much out of this class because they're chatting with each other casually as well as doing the work. So, I do have to tell them to shut up, but I'm also like, great, good for you guys. You've got a friend. Good.
No, that's so important. Because at that same language school, which I no longer go to, that was where I met, 2 years ago, I met my German tandem, conversation partner. And we've been meeting for lunch, every week for 2 years now. And we have about the same level of German and English. And so, it's just a no judgment zone where, we're both chaotically saying things until the other one gets it. And, over 2 years, I think both of us have gotten a lot better, which is really nice. And so we've just gotten to know each other at this steady rate, but it's far more motivating when you're like, oh, I'm actually communicating with another person.
Yeah, and this is the only tool that we have. This is, this language is the only tool that we have. It's really motivating.
What's been kind of the biggest okay, I had some impact on this. I'm thinking of one story in specific that you've told me before where you were you saw a student out in the wild and you were like, oh my gosh, do you know what I'm talking about?
It was, so I had been working in a further education college, which I work in one now. I was working in a different one. And then the pandemic hit and I lost my job. And I was very lucky that a friend of mine worked at a university, and she said, you've got a level 7 qualification. You can come join our academic skills team. And I was like, okay, I don't think I have the right qualifications, but I'll apply for the job. And I got through to the interview and they offered me the job. And I was like, great, I don't have a job. This is fantastic. And I really am so grateful for that experience, but it was so far removed from the type of teaching that I had done before. And it was the same sort of 4 sessions, over and over again on Harvard referencing and stuff like that. Luckily, serendipitously, I was free one afternoon. I was able to go to an interview for the college I work at now. And on the day of my first day of work at that college, where I was going in sort of mid-afternoon because I needed to, get my ID and all of that stuff, I thought, okay, it's early enough. I have time. I'll just stop into McDonald's. And I went into McDonald's in London Bridge, and I saw my old student there from the previous college I've been working at. And I saw him like walk it, and he was in his like supervisor uniform, and I was like, damn, he got promoted again. And I saw him like walking around. So I had eyes on him for ages before he had eyes on me. He called my number. I went up, and he just like locked eyes with me. And he had this moment of going, I know that person very well, but who are they? And I was like, thanks. It's so nice to see you. And then just left with my stuff while he is like just completely bent. But it was so like nice to see him there.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, obviously, you know, he had been working because you knew him when he was working there. And then, yeah, like, obviously, you know, if things were going well, he was promoted to a supervisor. But, like, yeah, I don't know. So I like that story because it was just, I don't know. On one hand, it's like kind of British of you that you weren't like, do you remember me? I'm from this school and da-da-da. Like, but, yeah.
Like, I just used his name when I said hello. So he was like, I'm sure as soon as I said that, I could see like the wheels turning, and it was as I was like walking out, I saw it click.
Okay, yeah.
But I couldn't stop to chat. I had places to be. I had IDs to get.
Mm-hmm. No, I do like that story though, because I remember you were like, okay, yeah, this is like a firm reminder that I want to be helping people who are, you know, trying to advance in their careers in the UK and like need English to do that. So it was kind of like a wake up call as you were interviewing for the job that you have now.
It just felt very serendipitous that I saw an ESL student on the day that I was going back to ESL.
Yeah, definitely. A sign that you have to retire there.
Yeah, exactly. I will stay there for the rest of my working life.
Working life, yeah.
Career, that's the word.
Working life, career, yeah, same. Yeah, I think, I don't know, as far as like nonprofit with for-profit education though, I feel like, especially me in this conversation, I've been quite negative on for-profit education, but like, do you think that for-profit language schools are still quite valid, or like what can students do to make sure that they get a good one, or make sure that because obviously like myself, you know, if I go to a language school, it's going to be a for-profit language school because I'm not eligible currently for any like German benefits of language learning. If I were to become unemployed, for example, then I would, but that's, you know, so like, how does someone like me, if I'm navigating like for-profit education, how do I make sure I'm getting the most out of it?
I honestly, like, I said this over and over again when I worked in private language schools, and I still think the same thing applies. It just depends which teacher you get. You're going to pay out the butt to go to a particular school, maybe one with a good reputation, maybe one that's a bit more affordable, a bit further out of the city centre. And in any of those places, you could get a teacher who, not maybe even a shit teacher, but maybe you're going to get a teacher who is going through a bad time. Maybe you're going to get a teacher who's, you know, been ill for months. Or maybe you're going to get someone who's putting in loads and loads of work and loves their job. I honestly think it comes down to the teacher. And
is that the same though is that the same at nonprofit though? Like, I'm not saying like, I'm not asking you to be like, yeah, at my school, there are some bad teachers, but like, because obviously that's not the point, but like, you know, different. Yeah, it's true. If you have money to spend, the best thing to do is get an online tutor, because you can pay for one session and then decide, no, that wasn't a good fit, and go for another one. But also at the same time, going to a language school can be I don't want to say don't ever pay money and go to a private language school. There's always an element of risk though, that you're not going to enjoy the classes because you don't get on with the teacher. I've had students who didn't get on with me, and, you know, they had me for they had this lovely bond with their teacher for, you know, however many weeks they were there. They forked out all this money to come to London, and then their teacher got swapped out and I got swapped in, and I'm fresh off the Delta with all of my new, you know, informed ideas. And they're like, why aren't we playing more games? Why is this person not fun? Why aren't they doing what our old teacher used to do? It's okay not to like everyone, you know? It's okay not like that. I've had teachers in the past who I don't really like that much, but like that's life. You meet people and sometimes you don't get on with everyone. Like, but yeah, I imagine that's kind of hard when you know that like one of your students really liked the teacher before you more than they like you. Yeah, I mean, I was expecting it, because they had kind of warned us at the end of the Delta. They warned us and they were like, you're gonna have pushback. You're gonna have pushback from students. You're gonna have pushback
from your colleagues, you have to just remember you have to negotiate. You can't just go hard. You have to negotiate and still do the things that students want to do, even though in theory, if you're doing everything we've taught you right, then the value will be found in the learning moments. And I think also it wasn't just that I was fresh off the Delta. I think it was, it was quite hard going back into the really intense, fast-paced private language school world of London, which is, it's so hectic. And you're working non-stop and you're earning a pittance and you're exhausted.
I mean, you can only do things so well when you're just like, you have like a course load of like 30 hours a week that you're like on your feet, like running around to each student, trying to just remembering everyone's name is exhausting, I imagine, let alone like planning all those separate lessons and like everyone's individual needs. And I do try to have, a bit more compassion for my own language teachers when I, especially in like a classroom setting, and like, oof, you've got like 30 of these a day, but I feel like because I have more knowledge, like as a language learner, I can go in and like be more informed about like what I'm looking for. But then sometimes I do need the teacher to like push back. Like the other day I was like, I just want to like I want to go through this instead. And the teacher was like, you said that you wanted to work on precision, so we can talk and I will understand you, but it sounds chaotic. Your words, not mine. And I was like, ouch. Okay. Yeah, you're right. You've hurt my feelings with my own words, but okay, we'll go back to what you said we have to do.
You need someone to keep you in check sometimes.
I think that's,
because sometimes, and that's across the board. Students that are mindful and intentional and remember to be mindful and intentional every lesson. You have students that remember about 50% of the time, and you have students that don't remember. They don't remember that they need to be it's like, it's the same. If someone tells you their name and you need to remember their name, you have to remind yourself to intentionally remember the name. If someone tells you the name and you don't remember to remember it, you forget the name. It's just like bringing that to every lesson.
I mean, but that's why I bring you with me to social gatherings, because I never remember anybody's names.
I'll be there.
You are very good at you're very good at names. Okay. Well, we've been chatting for about an hour now, so I want to any closing remarks on ESL or any funny stories that you were like, oh, I wanted to talk about that, but we didn't get to it.
I know that. I guess I just I had a really lovely moment last week when all of my results came in, and so all of my classes passed their exams with 100%, which was really lovely. Yeah. But the best thing was that when one of my students came out of her exam, and she's this she's so extroverted. I've never met someone as extroverted as her. And it took me a long time to realize that when she's talking too much, I can just be like, stop. And then she'll stop, but she doesn't care. But it took me so long to realize she's just that extroverted. And she came out of her exam like just buzzing. She was so happy. She gave me a hug and she just looked so proud of herself. And I was like, that's what it's all about, is empowering people and making them feel like they can achieve their goals.
Yeah. I love that. And it's like when you're learning a language, like there's just so many ups and downs of like, I can't speak at all, I'm fluent, I hate this, I am learning new vocab, and like those moments for sure gotta celebrate.
We put on cool when it was the lesson where we gave them the results. I put on Cool in the Gang celebration. I was throwing chocolate at everyone and everyone was cheering as everyone else came in. I was like, you passed. I wouldn't do that if there wasn't 100% pass rate in the class, because obviously then you have to tell, like, you've passed the exam. I'm sorry you didn't pass the exam. Don't worry, we're going to work. You can do that. That's not necessary on this occasion. It's Cool in the Gang and throwing celebrations around the room.
I love that. So maybe fewer games now that you're, a real deal teacher, but still throwing chocolate at people.
Yeah. I try to incorporate games, but I'm like, we got work to do, guys. Learning is the game. Having a light bulb moment is the game. You're playing the game every day. There are games. Fair. They don't involve tiny pieces of paper.
Yeah. I think if we can take away anything from this episode, it is early teachers, lots of prep time. Experienced teachers, no cutting up little bits of paper. Yeah. All right. Well, Thank you for being the guinea pig here on the first episode that, yeah, I'm going to use to just see what comes out of this. And then I might listen back and, other people, our friends are usually like, y'all are funny to listen to. So, maybe I'll just keep my head big and I'll be like, yeah, Heather and I, we're
Yeah,
fun to listen to. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. But thank you for supporting my creative endeavor for 2025 and being the first. And yeah, I
of
think we did it.
course. Thanks, Em. This has been fun.
It was fun. Thanks for joining. I don't actually know how to stop it. Okay, I'm going to stop it now.
Okay.
Thank you for coming
Bye.
and bye.